to episode 69 of How About Them Huskies. I'm Connor. We got the whole crew back, Matt and Andrew. And this is going to be a really juicy episode. One of our longer ones we've had in a while. I know our last one was that Big East tournament preview. That was 30 minutes. This one honestly might be a little longer. There's a lot to talk about as always. We previewed the Big East tournament. We haven't talked about what happened. I'm sure you know. If you don't and you only follow UConn based off this podcast and have no idea what goes on in the games, we won the Big East tournament. We beat Xavier, St. John's, then Marquette in the championship game. We're not going to talk too much about it because it's old news now. There's a lot more important stuff coming up later this week and in the next few weeks to talk about. We'll talk about the Big East tournament. I mean, it's not every day you win one. The Huskies hadn't won a Big East tournament since 2011. It's only the seventh time in program history. I believe seventh or eighth. I think it's eighth. I think we had seven going in. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But doesn't happen much. We haven't done it since Kemba, and it was a pretty. I wouldn't call it a dominant run. I mean, Xavier played us tough at the beginning. All the teams played us tough at the beginning, but we really pulled away in the second half. Just before we really break into these games here, what was your initial reaction to seeing that? I mean, we kind of expected to win the Big East tournament, but it's always tough. We have to play back to back to back days. It's never a guarantee. But how do you guys feel?
Yeah, I was pretty happy at the start of the year. I kind of set this as my goal for the team because, we came back in the Big East and we were kind of just in the middle of the pack for a little bit. Obviously won the national championship. So this year I kind of wanted to cement ourselves as the best team in the Big East, which I feel like we did pretty easily outside of a slip at the end of the St. John's game. But yeah, overall, I think, we just played great ball. It seemed like a different guy every game. We were swinging the ball, high assist numbers. So yeah, just, good overall team effort.
Yeah, what Matt said about that being the goal, obviously it was the one thing that we didn't have. We won our the as I call it, the Bill Walton Invitational. So we got that trophy. And then we got this year we got the Empire, and then we got the the national championship trophy. But the one thing we kind of been slacking in was Big East play. We didn't win the regular season championship or the tournament last year. This year we won both, but I mean, I think this is one of the best UConn teams I've seen in a long time. Even though last year's was very good, we just clicked at the right time, and this year's team's clicked since July. So this is just one of the best teams I've ever seen. I think honestly, I think the tournament is very good. Obviously, we proved that we were the best team in the Big East, but I think we're gonna win it. Honestly, I can say that pretty confidently.
Yeah, I don't want to jump ahead, but I kind of agree. I feel like this team is better than last year. I didn't think that going into the year, but just some of the guys that grew in this short 3 game span is huge. We'll talk about that. I feel like you guys have an idea who I'm referencing there, but just to get some guys some more run, just continue dominating the conference that we've done all year. I mean, 31-3 record. I mean, you don't see that every day. We have the best record in the country. There's a couple other teams with 30 plus wins. I want to say Houston. Actually, you're tied with James Madison. James Madison's also 31-3, but I feel like ours is a little more impressive, I'd say, seeing we don't play in the Sun Belt or whatever James Madison plays in. And who else has 30 wins? McNeese has 30 wins too. So I feel like we've proven we're the best team in the country going into this tournament. We are the number one overall seed. So he's got to play it out. But before we play it out, let's talk a little about the Big East tournament. I mentioned we beat Xavier. It was pretty easy, 87-60, kind of close at halftime, 1 point game, but really broke away in the second half. 6 guys finishing double figures. Not much to say about that one, but St. John's in that semifinal game, got interesting. That was a close game all throughout. We won 95-90. Tristan Newton was the one that stepped up in that one. He finished with 25 points, 9 assists, 20 points and 9 assists for Cam Spencer. Klingon was all right, 6 and 5 with 4 blocks. Caravan 14, Diarra 10 off the bench. That was a game we don't see often from us. Usually we don't score 95 and allow 90. I don't think we've done that all year. It's just got to win no matter how you can, just get it done, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tristan Newton obviously stepping up. This kind of felt like, one of the first times that Newton has kind of come out screaming and we won the game. As in the past, games against Kansas, obviously, Creighton. Newton's had fantastic games, but we haven't entirely been able to close them out. So seeing us close one out where Newton kind of completely took over is a good sight to see right before entering March.
Yeah, and it just to win in multiple ways also I feel like is important because against Xavier, we didn't have one guy step up like Newton did versus St. John's. We had six guys in double figures, all our starters, and Samson off the bench had 12. We really had an underrated tournament, Samson Johnson. He had 12 in the first game, six against St. John's. And I don't know if Marquette boxed up, but he had at least one or two buckets, I feel like, in that game. But yeah, you have to win multiple different ways if you want to advance in the NCAA tournament. We know that. We don't know that actually because all we did was blow out teams last year. But I'd be shocked if we win all our games by double digits again. There's going to be some close ones, especially in the loaded East region that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Maybe not loaded from a brand perspective, but looking at some of the teams and what they have accomplished this postseason, even in particular, is it's just kind of a scary region. We were in a very good region last year, but this year, once again, I'd say we're in the toughest region overall. But before we get to that, I mean, St. John's a semifinal. There's a final to talk about. Marquette. This was a very interesting game. I mean, I wasn't sure if we knew the game started. It was 2-0 at the 13:30 mark before Samson Johnson slammed home a bucket for our first points of the game, but it was all Huskies in the second half once again, the kind of a trend all Big East tournament long taking over in the second half. And speaking of taking over in the second half, this was a monster tournament for Jalen Stewart. I mean, we don't win the Big East championship without him, and that's not something I expected to say going into it. It was a 2-point game when he checked in the second half. He proceeded to make three straight threes, and when he checked out, it was a double-digit lead. I mean, he's grown so much even in the past couple of weeks. We have a legit 8-man rotation now. We were on the fence. I was on the fence. I was thinking we have the starters. We have Samson to split time at Klingon. We have DR. After that, there's question marks. Solo Ball hasn't played much. He didn't play at all in that Marquette game. Jalen Stewart, he's relieving Caravan, but he's not really an X factor. But boy, did he prove me wrong. Get 8 points in that St. John's game, 9 points in the Marquette game. He has been incredible. And we don't really view him as a guy that's a 3-point threat. Honestly, I don't. He's good to maybe make one once in a while, but for him to make three in a row like that, I mean, he banked one in too from the top of the key. He was just feeling it. And to have a guy like that step up when other guys like Cam Spencer only had 4 points in that game, Caravan only had six, Castle only had six. You need some production from the bench, and production we got.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts about, the whole Jalen Stewart thing. First of all, this kind of shows the direction that college basketball is going in. It's all about patience. And I feel like Hurley preaches that a lot because, I mean, you've seen guys in the past come in and they expect a big role right away and they don't get it and they transfer out and they're not ready. And I feel like Hurley obviously like he sees them every day in practice. He knows these guys, he sees them every day. And if they're not ready, they're not ready. I feel like Jalen Stewart, freshman, first year, things take time, especially in today's kind of game where it's more of a team game rather than a one and done, I'm going to get drafted first overall type game. So, shout out to him for his patience. Obviously, I mean, you want to see the same thing with the other guys, Ball and Ross, who, didn't get much play this year, but they got to stay patient. Another thing with Stewart is that it's a pretty big deal that he's breaking out here because it throws a whole wrench in your identity. A lot of teams, are looking at you as a defending national champion and they're kind of thinking, how do I play like these guys? How do we stop these guys? And I feel like having an eighth guy now kind of messes that up. I mean, you have a whole, say you have 10, 15 minutes without Caravan on the floor now. What do you do for those 10, 15 minutes? How do you stop that run? And it seems like these teams had no idea how to do it, and we took care of them pretty easily. So I'm thinking that, just this X factor, this just change of plans gives us just a massive advantage.
Honestly, I want to talk about that developing that Matt just said about the whole year. I mean, when Castle first got in, obviously he's a 5-star. People were thinking that he was going to be great out of the gate. He had a rough couple first games, and the overall consensus was, "Oh, this guy sucks. He shouldn't have been a 5-star. He should be out of the lineup." And then he started to get good and good and really good, and they're like, "Holy crap, this guy's the best player in the league." And it was kind of the opposite with Stewart and Solo Ball. Like Stewart didn't get a lot of time at first, and then did get a lot, as where Solo got a lot of time at first, and then Hurley realized maybe he's not completely ready for that role yet. So everything takes time in college basketball, especially if you want to win a national championship. You're not going to see many one and dones on national championship teams. You didn't see any from last year's team and even the year before. It's not a thing. Most one and dones are on teams, and I hate to say this because I feel like it's taking away from the kids, but most one and dones are on teams that suck. So it's it's gonna take some time, but I think we have the perfect developmental situation for these guys coming into the program next year and the ones that are already in it. Like Klingon being after Sonogo last year, then getting the start this year. Stuff like that. So I feel like Ross and Stewart and Ball will be in the lineup a lot next year if they stay, which I think they absolutely should.
Yeah, I think speaking on Ball, and then we'll kind of move towards the NCAA tournament talk. I think Ball is just a case of we have four guards that are better than him at this point in time in Castle, Newton, Spencer, and Diarra. It's tough to get that fifth guard, and especially when you have guys like Newton and Spencer who are capable of playing 35 plus minutes a game. Maybe the wear and tear will catch up to them at some point later this season. Hopefully not, but they can do that. You can leave a guy like Newton out there. He's got to average like 33 minutes per game. You don't need a guy like Solo Ball as much as he brings impact. I'm pretty sure he knocked down a three in that Xavier game. He actually had 5 points. I pulled up the box score. So yeah, what am I looking for? He impacts the game when he's called upon, but he just hasn't been called upon too much recently. I don't think we'll see much of him in the tournament, not in the rotation, certainly, because you don't take a guy out of the rotation for the last 3 or 4 weeks of Big East play and the Big East tournament and just throw him back in there for the NCAA. That's just not how it works. So I don't think we'll see much more Solo Ball this year, but I think he realizes that Castle's not going to be here next year, most likely. Newton's not going to be here. Spencer's not going to be here. Someone has to score some points. So he shouldn't even consider leaving. It's obviously his choice. I don't think he would, but he's got to be. I think he's smart enough to see what the future of this team is, and that the future of the team is him.
And coaches aren't perfect either. I mean, with Solo Ball, I feel like Hurley's looking at him as a project, someone that he could kind of build up to eventually be in the NBA because the talent in Solo Ball is undeniable, in my opinion. His explosiveness, just his ability. He knows basketball. He's really good. I feel like last year we kind of saw a similar thing with Andre Jackson Jr., except Andre was a junior and Hurley was kind of forced to make a move with him because we're kind of getting to the end here. We have a really good team. We have a really good chance. Hurley, I feel like, was kind of just forced to try, like, throw things at the wall and to see what sticks. And they eventually figured it out. I don't think that's going to happen this year. We're not going to go on a national championship run because we finally figured out how to use Solo Ball. But, maybe over the offseason, it's something that they could look at and, eventually slip into a starting role next year. And, maybe he's an impact player on another national championship run. Who knows? It's just all prediction.
All right, we got two more things I want to talk about. One kind of important, one not. But Donovan Clingan had 22 and 16 in that Big East final. That's something they said hadn't been done in a Big East tournament championship game since Patrick Ewing back whenever he was in the 80s. I mean, that is a stat line we have not seen from him. We know he's a big guy. He's not usually the best rebounder, but 16, that's a career high. I mean, if it's not, I'm shocked. I'm pretty sure he hasn't gotten that high before. It's just, I don't know. A lot of his rebounds were on our bad misses at the rim or his own bad misses at the rim. But either way, he got 16 boards. He was dominant. He hit his free throws, which is important. I don't, in that first half, the only reason we were in the game is because him and Sampson were able to get them buckets inside because we weren't hitting anything from outside. I think only 2 3-pointers in that entire first half. Newton had them both. It's just having that inside presence is huge. We had it with Sonogo and Klingon last year. To have it with Klingon and Johnson this year, I'm not going to start a conversation, which is interesting, of if which duo is better. Well, that's something for in the offseason, depending on how deep of a tournament run we make with this duo here. I feel like there's a debate there, but not right now. Just all in all, dominant game from Klingon. I thought she should have won Big East tournament most outstanding player. That went to Tristan Newton. It's just I feel like if you put up a stat line like that in the championship game, that should override, even if you have 6 points in the game before. It's just he was absolutely dominant in that Marquette game. No answer, especially against Oso Ighodaro, who's a solid defender, solid big man in this conference, all conference player. He really showed out, and he always shows out against Marquette. It's weird. He had his first career double double maybe not his first career, one of his best games last year against Marquette on the road. This year, he feasted against them in that game at home and we blew him out. It's just whenever we play Marquette, Donovan Clingan steps up to the plate and hits a home run.
Yeah, that was probably his best basketball game ever. I know in high school he put up some, ridiculous stats, but I mean, you're playing against, lower competition. I feel like in a Big East championship game, doing that against another top player in the Big East in Oso Ighodaro, is just a huge deal, especially, not just for the team, but for him, someone who's looking to get drafted in the lottery. I feel like that game for him is more important than any game he played last year, this year. He kind of solidified himself, I feel, and gave himself that status. And I feel like now if he just carries it over into the NCAA tournament, even if we only make it 3 rounds, if he could put up like 15 to 20 a game, I feel like he's pretty set.
That was just a dominant performance that we haven't seen from him in a long time. Obviously he put up 26 points against UNH. I think we could put that many up, but anyway, that was just like a dominant performance against it. Honestly, also Gadar was very, very good. He's definitely at least at the very least, a top 10 big man in the Big East. I don't really have time to make a list right now, but it was just a dominant performance against him and a very good Marquette team. And I think it really, like, NBA scouts are going to be drooling over that because that was just completely dominant. I mean, 22 and 16, he looks like he's ready for the NBA. So it also silenced all the haters, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just a raw canvas, and NBA teams love that nowadays. All they got to do is stick a 3-pointer on him, which he's obviously developing, and he could be a player one day for sure.
Speaking of being a player one day for sure, there's all this NBA mock draft stuff. We were talking about it before we hopped on. If I'm the New York Knicks, I look at a guy like Apostolos Rumoglu and see he averaged 4 points per game at Madison Square Garden this year and 0.5 in games in all of the arenas, and feel like if we give him more minutes, that might be a 25 point per game. No, I'm just kidding. But
Yeah, I was gonna say his per 36s are definitely definitely something
yeah,
to look at.
yeah, but he had a three in that game against Indiana at the Garden, and he had 5 points late against Xavier. The only two games he played at the Garden this year, scored a combined 8 points. He had 8 points in all other games, his other 16. So that's just something funny I noticed. He steps it up on the big stage. Take note, Knicks in the entire NBA. But let's move on to the NCAA tournament. Finally, the reason you clicked this video, because that's probably what I'm titling it. UConn, as I mentioned, the number one overall seed in the East region. Their first matchup, the number 16 seed out of the ASUN, the Stetson Hatters, their first ever NCAA tournament appearance. They finished 22 and 12 this season, which they finished second in their conference, but won their conference tournament. This shouldn't be too hard of a game. I don't want to make any assumptions because you never know. It's possible. As much as you don't want to think it is, it's happened twice in the past 4 tournaments, 5 tournaments, whatever. Virginia got exposed by UMBC, and then last year FDU pretty much exposed Purdue. So it's possible. It's not likely by any means. But what's your initial reaction going into this? Obviously, we're the number one overall seed, so we didn't have to wait too long to find out who we're playing. First team released in that bracket reveal. But what's your guys' reaction? We'll talk about the whole region as a whole after this, but just that first matchup, if you got anything.
Well, I just want to say, for starters, if we do happen to lose that game, you might not hear from us for like months. But I mean, of all the 16 seeds that there are, I looked at them. I mean, I feel like this is going to be a game that's like back and forth. It's not going to be a blowout from start to finish. It's not going to be like that DePaul game last year where we were up 38-2. Um, I mean, obviously they're in March for a reason. They're gonna come to play, but I don't think they have the tank to play the full 40 minutes against the team in March. Purdue obviously last year that was the worst game I think I'd ever seen a team play. UMBC was just better than Virginia, but those teams, the thing about those teams is they weren't as dominant as us. I mean, I feel like we could beat the Detroit Pistons or the Washington Wizards right now. But I think the game will be back and forth for a little bit, but eventually we're just gonna break that rope and just completely run away with it. But it should be a decent game for at least the first half. Like the Iona game last year. Obviously, we were miles better than them, but I think we were down by one at halftime. But Iona scored like maybe 25 points in that second half. They ran out of gas. So I think that's gonna end up happening. Is we'll play the full 40 minutes and they'll play like 18.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of different factors I think that go into teams as the one seed losing in the first round, big upsets, and a lot of it I feel like is just mentality. I feel like that Purdue team last year just had this idea that they were the best team in the country and that they could just feed the ball to Zach Edey, and then that was it. It doesn't seem like they had much of a game plan. They got pretty exposed, and Edey got exposed for sure. And, I just don't think that Dan Hurley would put a team out there that is that vulnerable. I can't see it happening. He's taking this game just as serious as the game against Marquette in the Big East Championship. You just know that's Danny Hurley. That's who he is. Also, just throughout the regular season, I'm looking at Stetson. They played Houston, ranked number 6, another top seed in the tournament. Um, they lost by 31 points. They played UNLV. They lost by 16 points. They lost to Charlotte by 33 points. They're not a competitive team. They're a competitive team in their conference, that's for sure. But I just don't think in the grand scheme of things that they have the talent to overwhelm a team like UConn.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they have some talented players. We'll talk about them in a minute here, but I was looking at their resume and I saw someone said this. I found it. They have a quad one win, which is not something you usually see out of a 16 seed. They went into UCF, Central Florida, and won on the road there. If you guys remember, Kansas, who beat us, lost at UCF. So you could do some backtracking. Stetson beat UCF, who beat Kansas, who beat us. I don't even think we should show up to the arena because they have no chance. But I mean, they have a road win against a Power Five team. If you even want to consider UCF a Power Five team at this point, but I don't know. This should be a fairly easy game. They have some players, but let's look at the rest of the region. Why not? Don't you never want to look too far ahead, but that's what we're gonna do. Should we advance against Stetson on Sunday in the second round? We get the winner of FAU and Northwestern. FAU, obviously a Final Four team last year, seconds away from playing us in the title game. They have a familiar face in Jalen Gaffney, who's still playing there. Northwestern, they have some solid talent. They're kind of banged up right now. They have Boo Buie, who's their all-time leading scorer. If I'm not mistaken, he just got that a few weeks ago. So it's an 8-9 game. So they're two solid teams, a game you should certainly win if you happen to play them. But yeah, so if I had a choice, we're not going to do a prediction or anything. So what if we have to beat Stetson first? I'd probably rather play Northwestern because FAU has that experience, but I don't know. Whoever they throw in front of us, you just got to play. You can't complain about who you play. You just got to play him and beat him.
Don't forget, FAU also have a little guy on the inside who knows a thing or two about how we play, Jalen Gaffney. So I feel like if we do come up against them, it will be interesting, especially with Gaffney knowing, more than another team would about what really goes on inside our locker room.
Yeah, definitely. You got like a secret spy going on, a Corey Floyd Providence type of beat. But I'll quickly run through the rest of the matchups in the region, and then we can discuss it. In the 5-12 game, San Diego State, another Final Four team from last year, the team we beat in the title. They're the 5 taking on UAB, the 12. Auburn and Yale is the 4-13. Good to see Yale in there, another Connecticut school. BYU versus Duquesne is a 6-11. Illinois versus Morehead State, the 3-14. You got Washington State versus Drake as the 7-10, and then the final matchup in our region, Iowa State, the 2 seed, taking on South Dakota State, the 15 seed. So, what's your guys' reaction to this region? Personally, I'll go first. I am. It's mixed feelings because I feel like we should be able to win this region kind of with ease. But at the same time, we're the 1, and we won the Big East tournament. The 2, Iowa State, won the Big 12 tournament and destroyed Houston. The 3, Illinois, they won the Big 10 tournament. They beat Wisconsin to get there in the title game, who beat Purdue the game before. So they didn't beat Purdue, but you know what I mean. And the 4 seed, Auburn, won the SEC tournament. So the top 4 teams in the region all won their conference tournaments. I feel like, not that that's disrespectful to us. That's not the word I'm looking for. It's just, I feel like they gave us a pretty challenging region for the number 1 overall seed. What do you guys think about that?
The way I look at our region, and it might not make sense, but the way I look at it is that I really only see like two other basketball schools. Iowa State and Illinois, really. I mean, Auburn is good, but to me, they're more considered a football school. This is all just my thought process. So in my opinion, these games are in Brooklyn. These first two rounds are in Brooklyn. I cannot see there being a ton of Auburn fans and students showing up. I just can't see it. Especially with how convenient it is for everyone around here. I just can't see like to me that's an advantage. I feel like having more than 50% UConn fans is definitely an advantage. And I'm thinking that we could see up to 70%. I don't know why. It's just a weird gut feeling. I think that we're gonna have momentum automatically. Obviously, coming off the Big East championship. These guys, they won their conference championships, but we just played down the street. I mean, we have, like, in my opinion, a huge advantage just in the morale department. I think that Auburn would not beat us. I don't think that Illinois would beat us. And to me, Iowa State, obviously, as the 2 seed, is the biggest challenge. Again, just my opinion. But I just can't see schools like Auburn or school like other schools like that, coming out to, beat us. I just can't see it.
I mean, our fans are like no other, for heaven's sake. I know like at least 120 people that went to Allen Fieldhouse on a Friday night just to go see us play a regular season game against Kansas. I mean, this guy over here up in the whatever corner this is went to Houston last year. We've all done crazy things to go see our team play. I flew back in a day to go to two UConn games from South Carolina. I went to the Big East tournament just for the heck of it, and I think our fans are just going to be there throughout the whole thing. And honestly, I just don't see a world where we don't get to the Final Four again because we go Brooklyn, Brooklyn, Boston, Boston, and you might think like, yeah, these teams are really good and they definitely could beat us, but fans make a difference, man. Let me tell you. I mean, that Providence game at the Big East tournament when we were up by 25, our fans made a difference in us getting up, and then they made a difference in us going down and then getting back up again. So fan participation has a huge play in in this tournament. So I think we got really lucky being in the East and going Brooklyn and then Boston. So that Matt's point is 100% right with that. And it's huge. It's a huge point to make.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you go and you see these games. You like Kentucky's a 3 seed. Kentucky's a tough school. Kentucky has fans all over the country. I personally know Kentucky fans. It's just a matter of like who's going to show up, who's going to be there supporting their team. And I feel like a lot of times in March, the teams that get the most support have the most success. This could just be me speaking gibberish, but I really think that it does matter. I went to the ACC tournament one year, just to check it out, and the amount of people showing up to see these teams is insane, especially in New York. It was in Brooklyn, exactly where we were, and I've seen it. I've seen North Carolina fans take over. I've seen Virginia fans take over. They're everywhere. Am I worried about going to Brooklyn and having Illinois fans flood the building? Not entirely, but I feel like just that little advantage, sometimes is all you need.
It's a huge advantage when you think about it, though. I mean, that building, Barclays Center, is an NBA arena. And like we saw in the Marquette game, like their NBA arena wasn't really even full. So, we can pack any arena. A lot of those Allen Fieldhouse fans were UConn fans, and there were never mind NRG Stadium, an 80,000 person stadium. But our fans love to travel and they love to see this team. I mean, myself, Connor, and you, Matt included. So it's just a huge oh God, what is it called? Like a huge advantage for us to have this East bracket. Although I think our fans would go anywhere to see us, honestly, after the misery we went through from like 2015 to 18.
That is a beautiful transition into what I was about to say because Matt, you mentioned how that ACC tournament you're at, fans go. There's a bunch of fans from all these teams. I saw on Twitter the quarterfinal game between Temple and Charlotte in the American tournament. That must have been Friday night for their quarterfinals. Had an apparent attendance of 37, which is crazy. And looking at pictures, I kind of believe it. I mean, that conference is in the dumps completely. They lost Houston, they lost Cincinnati. Those are their top two, with Memphis, two of their top three basketball brands. They're in the Big 12 now. What they add Rice and UTEP there. I'm glad we got out of there when we could and got back to the Big East, man. That those were some dark days. I don't know why I mean, it's tough to put a conference tournament somewhere neutraler than Texas when you have a team from Philly, you have a team from Tampa, Florida, teams all over the country. So it's tough to get fans to come together, but that was hilarious to see. Just wanted to bring that up real quick.
And nobody cares about these games. I was watching some of them. I watched a few Charlotte games um, for no reason, but definitely not on DraftKings. But I what's it called? I noticed. I was like, wow, like these are dead. These games are dead. And I was thinking about it, and would I rather spend like $20 plus fees and parking and this and that to go watch this game, or would I rather watch it on my couch? Um, it's just like, is it really worth it? I don't think so.
I mean, honestly, not to pick out that conference, but I watched a lot of the conference tournaments games, and that each game for the Big East tournament, I heard "Let's go Huskies" multiple times to the TV. I never heard anything from any other fan base. So, I mean, I think we're one of the strongest fan base in college basketball. You can say what you want about the Cameron Crazies and UNC and their and Duke's 12-person arena, but I think we're the strongest and most dedicated fan base in the country, and I'll stand on that for a long, long time.
I agree. We show out wherever we go, and Cooper Flagg's decision is looking better for him day after day. But let's go into Stetson a little bit. Talk about some of their guys. They have four double-digit scorers. One of them, Jalen Blackman, he's the guy you have to watch out for. If in a world where Stetson pulls off the miracle, it's going to be because Jalen Blackman had an amazing game. He averages 21.5 points per game, which is top 10 in the country this season, according to ESPN. He had 43 points in the ASUN title game. He shoots very efficiently as well. He shoots 91% from the free throw line, so he's not really missing any free throws. He's almost 40% from three, 43% from the field, so maybe not crazy efficient from the field overall, but he can hit his threes. He hits his free throws. He's just a bucket getter. I feel like we're gonna throw a guy like Castle on him. Castle's our best perimeter defender. I feel like Blackman, I believe he was 6'3". They're not a crazy big team. Nowhere near, at least in the guard position, nowhere near as big as us with Castle and Newton. But Blackman's the guy you have to watch out for. You got Stefan or Steven. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'll go Stefan. It's an A. So Stefan Swenson, averaging 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. Kind of like a do-it-all guy. He had 19 points in the ASUN title game. He is their point guard. I don't know much about him. I haven't watched more I watched a little bit of that title game, maybe the last minute because it was a close one. I don't know much about Stetson, to be honest, but they have, like I said, four double-digit scorers. Aubin Gadaresti is what we're gonna call him. I'm not sure if that's right. He's their center. He's 6'11". He averages 12 and 7.5 rebounds. He's a solid inside presence. Not sure how he'll do against Klingon, but at least he's a body in there for them. And then Alec Oglesby averages 11 points per game as the fourth double-digit scorer. So they got some talent. Do they have the talent of us? No. So we should fairly easily pull this one off, I feel like, but you never know. It's March.
One thing, I just kind of want to bring this back. Last year, we talked about size a lot, and I feel like these guys have one thing that a lot of the teams that we played last year didn't have, and they have four guys over 6'10". Landon Bubasak, Finley Sheridan, Trayton Thompson, and Aubin Gadarest. We're having a hard time, but um, all over 6'10". Trayton Thompson, 7 foot. Aubin, we'll go with that, is 6'11". They got some big bodies, definitely, and they could experiment. They could throw some things out there, try and crack the Danny Hurley code. So I mean, I'm interested to see, and what they do. There's no way they just go out, play the regular game plan. So I'm pretty excited because I feel like, maybe early on in the game, it might be a little competitive. I feel like we will pull away, we will win like we normally do, but it's, good to see a team coming with size that we sort of have.
Yeah, Aubin and Stefan Swenson are both from Belgium, so they got some foreign flair in Florida going on. But I agree, it might be close to the beginning, mostly because I don't know if you guys have realized this as well. We're really struggling at the beginning of games recently. We've had 5 straight very slow starts, dating back to that game on the road against Marquette, where I think we scored the first couple of buckets, but they went on a quick double-digit run to take the lead. We all know what happened at Providence. It was a 15-2 start for the Friars, and we ended up killing them by 15. Xavier was up 10-0, if I'm not mistaken, against us, or 7-0. It was one of the two, and St. John's was the other. So, and obviously the Marquette game in the Big East final, we didn't score in the first almost 7 minutes of the game. So you can't start out, even if it's Stetson, you can't start out slow like that, because what if you don't pick it up? We've been fortunate the past 5 games. We start slow, but we pick it up in this later in the first half and especially the second half. What if the shots don't fall? What if it's a New Mexico State situation where one guy, say a Jalen Blackman, takes over and no one really steps up to the plate and scores? I think this team's a lot better than that 21-22 team, which was a very solid roster with RJ Cole, Tyrese Martin. But I feel like there's more scoring weapons on this year's team, so that shouldn't be an issue. We shouldn't fall into that sort of ball game, but you got to stop with these slow starts. Even though we won all 5 of those games pretty handily, except the St. John's game was kind of close, 5 points. You can't come out flat in the tournament because you never know what could happen.
Hurley sees these slow starts and he's thinking about ways to, stop them. A lot of our slow starts, I feel like, are due to just inconsistent shooting from behind the line. Usually it's Tristan Newton, Stephon Castle putting up some shots early, and all of a sudden we're down 10-3. I feel like we're going to see a different approach, especially in this first game, especially after that game that Klingon just had, where we're getting in the paint. Castle's abusing his size over the smaller guards. Probably a lot of dump offs to Klingon down low. So, yeah, I mean, it's all up to Hurley.
Think we can jump to our players to watch. Usually this is our last segment, but we have a couple more things to touch upon after this. So either you guys want to kick us off, our first NCAA tournament player to watch of the season.
I'll take it. I just mentioned Donovan Klingon, and I feel like he's going to be essential just to the game plan. Obviously not putting up deep shots early and starting off hot. I feel like Klingon's a big piece of that. So I feel like he'll probably get off to a hot start. Maybe a first half double-double. That'll be my prediction for Donovan Klingon.
I'm gonna go with Alex Caravan because I think with all these names that I'm not even gonna try to say because I'm looking at them right now and this is just gonna end in a disaster. Um, and Stetson fans like calling us mean names or something. But all these guys that are like above 6'10", I feel like they're gonna swarm Klingon, and Alex Caravan is gonna be left wide the hell open. So I think that he's gonna cash in on almost every opportunity he gets. So I'm gonna take Caravan as my guy to watch for the Stetson game.
Yeah, last year it was the Arkansas fans that found our podcast, and we're not happy when we said they don't have the size, even though their tallest, like their starting center was 6'9" compared to Klingon. But I'm gonna go Jalen Stewart. He's had he's in his best stretch of his career right now. He had 11 in that road game against DePaul like a month ago, but to have 8 points for St. John's, followed up with 9, he is turning into that weapon. And I know we talked about it. I want to see how he continues to grow, especially in a game like this where we might hopefully we're at the luxury of we're up by like 30 something and we don't have to play Caravan 35 minutes and Newton 35 minutes and all these guys. We can get Stewart a little more run. I mean, he's proven, I feel like he's earned it. He shot combined 7 for 8 in the Big East, at least in those 2 games. He's earned more of a run. He got more of a run. Caravan told Hurley, I saw in a quote after the game, he said, leave him in because he was balling out, and he did leave him in. So he's earned the run. I want to see how he expands on that. This is a weaker opponent, but it's an NCAA tournament team. It's not a weak opponent. I just want to see Stewart continue his excellent run he's on. So, like I said, I want to talk about a couple more things. we'll have a little fun at the end, but right now, we all know what happened with the Big East. Three teams in the NCAA tournament. Number one, us. Number one, UConn. I'm not going to say us. Number one, UConn. 2 seed Marquette and 3 seed Creighton. No other Big East teams made it. Seton Hall was, I want to say, the third team out and the first 4 out. St. John's and Providence were not even in the first 4 out, so they were way off. But what was your reaction to that? I know I was kind of stunned. I knew there was a chance, mostly because of all the bid stealers. The committee said there were 5 bid stealers, which is like a lot, seeing there were like 3 in the past 2 years. But either way, you got to have more than 3 teams in a league that, looking at metrics, is the second best in the country.
Sound the alarms and call the police because this conference has been robbed. I think the fact I think the fact that Seton Hall and St. John's didn't get in, but Michigan State did as a 9 after going 19-12, that's embarrassing. And of course, the day after NCAA basketball posted a reference, these teams have had like the longest run in March. And Michigan State was on there. They're terrible. Both Seton Hall and St. John's would beat that team by probably at least 12, 15 points. And that's just embarrassing that they were in that. And it just sucks for them because honestly, like obviously I'm a UConn diehard fan and so are we, but I want to see this conference get treated right. And I want to see as many teams as possible because that means better competition. And for them to leave both of those teams out was just embarrassing. And it's a problem. And I really hope that the committee takes a long look at this one. And I also am the biggest Mississippi State fan whenever they play Michigan State. I hope they blow them out of the water and it's not even close.
And I'm not sure if you guys have seen, speaking of this, but since we've been recording, the Big East released a statement on it. They started it off with saying, they have great respect for the men's basketball committee, time and effort they go into putting everything together. But they said that, and I quote, given the high level of play in our league, we are understandably very disappointed that some worthy Big East teams were not selected to participate. And, it's short and sweet. They're obviously not going to go trashing the committee, but, the fact that you have to put out a statement in itself, I feel like speaks enough. And I mean, a team like St. John's, we were just looking before this, ranked 25th on KenPom, didn't make it. It's insane. It's pretty crazy, especially in, you know, the second best conference in college basketball statistically. It's just so strange. Another thing was that the only teams from the Big East that made it, the top 3 teams, were all top 3 seeds or top 4 seeds. I mean, there has to be some sort of consistency there. I feel like, St. John's obviously turned it up at the end of the year and made it out of they make it to the semifinal of the tournament when we beat them. So, I mean, they had a great run. It didn't make much sense. The vote stealers are very tough, but just in general, I feel like, you need to get these guys in. It's better for the game of college basketball to have teams like this in over teams, which are obviously going to flunk out in the first round.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate circumstance. Like we would mention the 5 bid Steelers, like Oregon out of the Pac-12 wouldn't have made it without winning. NC State went on a miracle run. They join Kemba, NC State. That Kemba team is the second team ever to win 5 games in 5 days. So that's impressive. I'm not saying I'm not mad at them for that. I'm mad at them because the Seton Hall's not in the tournament. But they went on a run. Dayton lost, so Duquesne stole a bit out of the A10. UAB won the American, so FAU, who was an 8 seed, which is kind of crazy. I know we talked about them. We were probably going to play them in our second game, but they have 2 quad 4 losses, and we're an 8 seed as an at-large without even making the conference championship, which is weird in itself. And who was the other bid stealer? New Mexico, who probably should have been in anyways. They're a very talented team. Spoiler alert, I have been going kind of far in my bracket. We're going to talk about our brackets after this, and then we'll finally be done. If you're even still listening to this, it's been a long episode. But all in all, I'm just upset that St. John's wasn't close, not even in the first 4 out. Providence, I understand, because if you kind of look at their track record, if you take out their since Hopkins got hurt, they're kind of like 500 with a bunch of wins over Georgetown and DePaul in there. So I can understand them not being in, but St. John's, it just shows that I don't know what it shows, honestly. 25th in Ken Palm, that's got to be a record for a team that doesn't make it into the tournament. It's just they beat Seton Hall in that quarterfinal game. I have a feeling that knocked out Seton Hall because they lost, and we all assumed that would put St. John's in, but they weren't even close with that win. So I can't imagine where they'd be if they lost that game. Seton Hall will probably be in the tournament in the first four, but all in all, it's just you got to have more than three teams in this tournament. I mean, not to diss the Mountain West because I love the Mountain West and watch a lot of their games, but the Mountain West can't have six teams and the Big East have three. It's just that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's sucky for the league, but I guess the one positive we could take away is that it's pretty awesome for us because these are the last teams I want to see in March. I want to play all out of conference teams, and I don't want to worry about these guys because they know us, and it's the last thing you want to run into in a one-game winner-take-all type situation.
My last point on this is that St. John's played the number one team in the country, number one overall seed, close all three times. It was very close all three times. The game at XO was 4. Big East tournament was 5, and I think we ended up running away with it at the end of the one at MSG, but they still played us very, very close. They could have beat us 3 times, honestly. And I feel like that would have completely changed things for us and them, but I think it's just a joke in general. And one last statement, go Mississippi State.
Yeah, St. John's could have beat us any of those times. Seton Hall did beat us. If they're like that close to making it, I feel like that has to be a factor. Your number one overall seed, one of their three losses is this team that's on the bubble trying to get in. That has to account for something. Like they didn't have a great non-conference, which I feel like was what killed them. But to finish 13-7, 6 games over 500 in Big East play and not make the tournament is just wild to me. And I know, Matt, you mentioned you don't want to see these teams in the tournament. I don't want to either, but just to, I don't even know, just to shove it in the face, like the committee and the NCAA, let's have UConn, Marquette, and Creighton all make the Final Four. I don't care who the fourth team is. Just show the Big East is superior. Let's do it. And speaking of let's do it, Final Four. We all made our brackets already. Selection Sunday was yesterday at the time of recording. I made my bracket pretty much live as it was coming out. Who we got as our Final Four picks? We can go around. I think we should all have a unanimous champion. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't pick us to win last year, and that was a mistake because I probably would have won a few of my pools I was in. But I didn't pick us to win. I don't think I picked us in the Final Four really in a lot of my brackets last year. This year's a little different. But when do you guys want to start? Maybe making your Final Four picks and up to the championship.
Yeah, I'll start. So I got this random school called UConn that I just threw in there. They seem decent, so I just threw them in there. But I got besides us, obviously, I have this is gonna be an interesting one. I've got Kentucky. I just think that Dillingham's gonna take them. I've got Dayton and TCU because I think they're just gonna get hot and make it because TCU has sort of an easy path. I wouldn't say anything is easy in March, but I think my four UConn, Dayton, TCU, Kentucky, and I think we're gonna win the national championship. A repeat of 2014.
Yeah, and I went. So, I mean, obviously, March Madness is never how you expect. So, I kind of took the matchups that were given to me, not just like where teams are. I know a lot of people like to just be like, oh, this team's better. Like, let me choose them. But you got to look at the style that these guys use and previous success. Um, so my Final Four currently, this is not a finished product. This is just kind of where we are today. Is obviously UConn in there, but I have us playing Nevada, and that's a little surprising. But part of me doesn't trust the teams that they're coming up against, and it's just like if they can get hot, if they could turn it on, I could definitely see it. Plus, it's all luck of the draw, anyways. I have Duke. I feel like, they're obviously a powerhouse, top 10, 15 team mostly every year, despite, past couple of years was weird, but I feel like they'll be there. And Creighton, I feel like I've been saying it all year. Creighton is my sleeper pick, even though they're not really a sleeper, but they were. I have them making the national championship and playing us, so a Big East national championship. Other notable, other notable things happening on my bracket is McNeese going to the Elite Eight, And NC State making a pretty deep run to the Elite Eight, carrying that momentum, losing to Duke there. But I feel like that'll definitely be kind of a fun storyline if it happens. Overall, just kind of threw it together. No real validity to anything that any of us say, just because how these things usually go. But just going by March, Nevada to the Final Four.
I feel like Creighton is certainly very due after being seconds away from a Final Four last year. I don't have him in. Don't get me wrong. I don't have him in my Final Four, but they're certainly due. I obviously, out of the East region, in a tough call between the winner of the UConn Stetson game, I am going UConn. They'll be facing another. We all have weirder ones in that lower. I believe that's the West region below. I have New Mexico, the 11 seed, getting in. I mean, you each had the seven Dayton and 10 Nevada. So we're predicting a wild, wild West this year. In that top right region, the South, I have Kentucky. I know they usually fall out early in the tournament. I feel like this Kentucky team is different. You mentioned Dillingham, Reed Shepherd's there, Antonio Reeves is a veteran. I feel like it's finally their year to break through, get back to the Final Four, and in the final region, the Midwest. I personally feel like the best matchup there is going to be that Tennessee versus Creighton game in the Sweet 16. And I have Tennessee winning that one and advancing to the Final Four, beating maybe a little bit of Cinderella run in Utah State going to the Elite Eight, because I have Utah State knocking off Purdue in that second round as an 8 seed. So my Final Four: UConn, New Mexico, Kentucky, Tennessee, and not copying an Andrew here, but we got another. I got the 2014 rematch as well. UConn beating Kentucky in the national championship for banner number 6.
You mentioned the SEC. I feel like we're kind of getting off track, but it's all for fun. Who cares? I don't like my big thing with them this year is that they all just fall apart randomly, just without warning. These SEC teams just don't hold up. I think Kentucky is good, but I don't think that they just have, I don't know. I mean, Dillingham and Shepard are obviously fantastic players, but watching them lose, what did they lose in the semifinal of their conference tournament, just kind of rubbed me the weird way. And watching Tennessee lose in the first or second round of that tournament rubbed me the wrong way. I personally think that like the SEC is just going to kind of flirt out this year. Tennessee will lose in the second round. That's what I have to Texas. I don't know. It's just like every team in the SEC to me is a ticking time bomb. When are they going to fall out? It's just a matter of when to me, not if. I don't know. But again, got a little bit off track, but I just felt like I had to say something about the SEC this year.
Yeah, they're all ticking time bombs. The one that hasn't blown up yet is Auburn. They'll blow up first game. They're losing to Yale. But I think that'll just about do it here. We'll do one last thing. We all picked UConn, obviously. Where I didn't expect any of us not to out of the East region. But say it's not us. What team do you think would move on from the East if it's not UConn?
I
Tough
raised my
question.
hand. I raised my hand, and I didn't think that's what you were gonna ask. Iowa State to me, they're one of the best teams in the country. They could have been a 1 seed in my honest opinion, but I just feel like they're our toughest competition coming out of the East right now.
Iowa State or Illinois for me. The winner of that game will move on, obviously.
And I personally think Illinois, but I know that is a weird question to ask. But I'm just curious because in a world where we don't exist, which I don't know why that this would be the bracket, but either way, it doesn't matter. UConn should win the East region. I saw people say with ease. It's not going to be with ease. It's a very deep region, even if the name brands aren't there. But we got to stop focusing on that. We got to beat Stetson. This is the Stetson preview that's lasted almost an hour, but finally, I think we're done. I don't know what we're gonna do this year. Last year, if you recall, if you were a listener back then, we did these mini episodes between. I don't know if I really like that. We'll see what we do this time around. Maybe we'll have a full episode between. It's tough to say right now. It's a quick turnaround. We play Friday and then we play again Sunday. There's not a lot of time to do recording, but we'll try our best. Well, you'll get some sort of content between games from us if it's a little episode, maybe a shorter, long form episode on here, whatever it is. But if we lose to Stetson, we'll certainly do a crazy, maybe 2.5 hour episode. Either that or you won't hear from us, like Andrew said. But either way, episode 69 is complete. Our longest one in a while, probably our longest one since that St. John's rant a couple like last season. But Yeah, hope you listened this whole time, and if you did, thanks for watching.